Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. We are live on Al Jazeera and on YouTube.
And I'm Malika Bilal. For this special episode of the show, we're also on 360 video in collaboration with Contrast VR, Al Jazeera's immersive media studio, streaming on Facebook. You can take a peek right there on the Al Jazeera Facebook page, and we're sharing it on the stream.
It has been 1 year since US President Donald Trump won the election in one of the most hotly contested and divisive races in the country's history. The businessman turned politician pledged to drain the swamp in the capital, Washington, D.C., and shake up the system. In his victory speech, Trump pledged to bring a fractured nation together and renew the American dream. Have a listen.
To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people. Working together, we will begin the urgent task of rebuilding our nation and renewing the American dream. I've spent my entire life in business looking at the untapped potential in projects and in people all over the world. That is now what I want to do for our country. We're going to rebuild our infrastructure, which will become, by the way, second to none. And we will put millions of our people to work as we rebuild it. We will get along with all other nations, willing to get along with us. We will be.
So has Donald Trump lived up to his promises from election night? We asked our community to share what they thought were President Trump's biggest successes and failures so far. Here are their opinions.
Thank you, Mr. President, for picking up young and conservative Supreme Court judge and your economic reforms. Jobs are coming back. Economy is growing. Thank you for your promises which you're trying to deliver and making America strong again.
I think the biggest success by President Trump this past year has been his effect on illegal immigration. Better border security reduces illegal crossing, and of course less competition for low-wage jobs leads to higher employment for US citizens.
I think far and away the biggest issue that we have to deal with Trump's administration so far has been the Muslim ban and the impact it's done to communities and their immigration rights. I know myself and a lot of other people who come from at-risk countries were really threatened by the impacts of that and what that means for our families, and we're still seeing the repercussions of that from a policy perspective to this day. So I would say that would be his biggest failure so far.
One of Donald Trump's failure is his desire to terminate the nuclear deal with Iran and his war ambitions against the DPRK, that is North Korea.
So how does the president's first year stack up with naturalized US citizens? We're happy to have back with us for the fourth time in our stream town hall, Mayra Campos Segura. She is a patient navigator. She's immigrated to the US from Mexico. Her husband, Anthony Segura. Anthony is an NRA instructor.
AJ Siddiqui is an accountant and immigrated to the U.S. from Pakistan. And his daughter, Sana Siddiqui, is a graduate student. She was born in the United States.
Jeannie Nguyen is president of the Voice of Vietnamese Americans. She came to the United States as a refugee from Vietnam. Aloyda Georges, who's an immigration lawyer, her family, originally from Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau, immigrated to the United States from France.
And Saba Ahmed is president of the Republican Muslim Coalition. She immigrated to the United States from Pakistan. Now, we hoped to be joined by Jesse Singh, founder of American Sikhs for Trump, who's been with us for our previous town halls, but he is unwell. Welcome to the stream, everyone else.
Thank you. Good to have you here in person. So, a quick review from a family that is divided politically. Anthony and Mayra, how has the last year been for you? How do you like your president? Anthony?
Well, I'm still very supportive of the president. I'll keep it at that for now.
Oh, very supportive. Mayra, how do you like your president?
Well, really, I don't think that until now we see any positive change. I think that all his promise in the past, until now, he really didn't get it. Like immigration issues, like the taxes, like the health system. I don't think that until now we can see nothing different. But we can see increase the hate. We can see increase the racist. We can see the division in this country.
I agree to that. I think recently we've seen lots of crises all over the countries, especially created with hatred and brought up discriminations, even supremacists, white supremacists, the KKK. What happened in Virginia, in Charlottesville, was terrible. And the president was very, very unable to call out the wrong side, which is the KKK and the Nazi at the beginning. And he had a difficult time seeing the concern of the people. What happened yesterday in Virginia with the elections, people came out in droves. I worked the polls, and I saw young people, old people, people with disabled came out through the rain. People who could not walk, had their family came out to the rain. They said, we had to vote to change this. They were very worried about the chaos in the country, and also very worried about their health care, about their safety. People with colors very worried about the immigration law. And I, as a refugee, was very worried about everything that put on to the refugee vetting.
So I'm glad that you mentioned the elections, because that's one of the things that people online are tweeting us about. And it's because of headlines like this. This is from the Washington Post. Anti-Trump backlash fuels a Democratic sweep in Virginia and elections across the country. So some people are looking at this as a backlash. As you see here in this headline, this is what one person tweeted us. Avery says Trump's approval rating is dropping significantly, and the Democratic wins in Virginia are clear evidence of this shift taking place. Another person links it, of course, to the election of a year ago, Loida. Kane says Dems succeeded this year in Virginia because they rejected Donald Trump's message of hate and bigotry. What do you make of the elections that we just saw November 7th? Do you think it's a backlash? Do you think this is something that just happens every time there's an election?
Well, this is an off year, so there's a lot of speak about how this has more to do with the traditional surge of voters coming out just didn't happen, and that it usually is the opposing party than what's in the office that comes out in droves. But I would say that there's something else going on here, because the candidate, at least in Northern Virginia, wasn't necessarily strong in and of himself, but folks were that much against Trump. So I think there's something definitely there. I think a true test of this will be the midterm elections in 2018, when we see stronger candidates or more candidates with larger names. But I think it's hopefully a telling of what's to come.
I would say that's not against Trump, but they want to sustain the American values. And everything Trump has done has destroyed the faith in American values. Because if you look at the candidates in Virginia, there was a transgender candidate that won big time, the first time ever. And just look at the transgender ban that Trump put out, that our Secretary of Defense has to put a stop on it. We have in District 42 a Vietnamese refugee woman, first time running, right after she gave birth to a baby girl. And she decided she had to run to protect women's rights in Virginia and to protect liberty and freedom for her children in Virginia. So there's a lot of concerns raised
jump in. I don't
in
think
Virginia.
It's the wins in Virginia are direct. I mean, Virginia has been a blue state, similar to New Jersey. So it's nothing new that a Democratic governor won the race over there. Yes, Republicans were hoping to take over that state, but obviously, we had a Democratic incumbent, and now the new
Not
Democratic.
So. Virginia is considered a red state until 2006, and in 42nd District, it has been a red delegates until this year. Dave Albo was a Republican that stayed in that seat for 20 years.
Town Hall
This is getting a little too grassroots. I love it because I live next door to Virginia, but we have the whole world watching. Malika.
So from local elections to a bigger picture, people who are in our international audience and what they can relate to, the economy. That's, of course, a big one. I want to read a couple tweets to you on both sides of this debate. Zach says, Trump continues to take credit for a trend of job growth that indisputably began under Obama, despite having enacted zero legislation to continue that trend. Now, someone who would support Trump says, one thing that is a direct result of Trump elected is the stock market surge. This is a function of the donor class believing in a big tax break and not the masses of Americans entering the market. So let's go to the man himself. Here is what President Trump has said over the past year about the economy. Take a look.
As you probably have noticed, the stock market hit an all-time record high today, over 22,000. We've picked up substantially now more than $4 trillion in net worth in terms of our country, our stocks, our companies. We have a growth rate, a GDP, which has been much higher than, as you know, anybody anticipated, except maybe us. I think the country, look, you take a look. I've created over 1 million jobs since I'm president. The country is booming. The stock market is setting records. We have the highest employment numbers we've ever had in the history of our country. That's why I've already slashed more unnecessary job-killing regulations than any president in history. That includes their entire term, and I've only been here for about 10 months.
So, Anthony, sweeping economic success, what's your take?
Oh, I agree 100% with him on that. And I think every day I listen to the stock market, it's record-breaking. And I think that's just going to continue. The only problem I have with the president is I want him to get back to working on the infrastructure, building this economy, building the roads, building the bridges, get away from the petty stuff and get back to what he said. So that's why I've kind of downgraded him a little bit. But once he gets back on track and he starts building this country back up, the economy is going to really thrive. And that's what I want to see.
Exactly my point. Because the Democrats also put forth the infrastructure proposal, and they were expecting bipartisan and support from the government, the president. But up until now, Trump hasn't worked on it. He didn't put a start on infrastructure.
The economic growth
and
is a
naturally
strong
is bad.
factor. I think that overrides a lot of the shortcomings that his administration has had. I think the stock market having record numbers is indicative of his business background and of him increasing job growth. Those were his strengths when he came to office, and I think that's showing in the reflective
the job
in the
growth
stock market.
Let me just bring in AJ, because if anyone knows about
policy.
finance and economy and how the economy is doing, an accountant would have a pretty good grasp of that. AJ, what are you seeing? How are your clients doing?
Well, I think my clients are not doing any better. Anything that is happening in terms of positive effect on the economy is based on what President Obama left. And as a result of that, the reflection of his policies, we're having growth and we're having some improvement in the economy. On the other hand, as far as President Trump is concerned, he has not taken over as President of the United States. He continues to run for the election. He continues to rile up his base. He continues to go out and do the things that every candidate does. But once they take over, they become President of the United States, they get everybody together and they do things that benefit the whole nation.
I think, though, but in prior administrations, including Barack Obama, the country accepted him and they let him do his job. All right? They're not letting President Trump do his job. They're attacking and attacking and attacking. Stop attacking the president.
Because the
Let him
president
do what
did
he
his
needs
job
to do.
well.
President Obama was one of the most vilified presidents that we've had in our generation and beyond. So to say that we are stopping him, not one single legislation has passed through the House. Not one. So when you're talking about how there's been a boom in an economy, aside from executive actions and moves behind closed doors that probably benefit his cronies, not necessarily the people at large, it really begs the question, what has he done to actually make our economy succeed? There's actually been...
But Lloyd, it actually has grown. We checked. And the economy has grown in the past year by 2%.
What did he do? That's my thing.
Part of the argument is that actually taking away some of the restrictions that businesses have, putting out an attitude that actually I'm good for business,
Yeah, his
Does
strong
that make
leadership.
sense?
Yeah, his strong leadership is a direct result, a direct backbone of the Wall Street having faith in the government, and the business community is reacting very strongly to his policies. The tax reform legislation that's coming up. It's a top-down.
The tax reform is a failure to the society.
Trickle-down economics has never worked.
Going to show that and economy because can be higher, but that's going to benefit the owner to the company, not the country.
Exactly. No, everybody, all shareholders,
when the
and all stock
investors are
market.
putting the money in a country, well, they're going to create more jobs.
Right.
We don't see that now.
And how many of us are shareholders? Let's get real about the people at the bottom. How many of us are...
the stocks in New York,
Exactly.
except a few of his cabinet
Exactly.
and a few of his close friends, 1%. So the stock market's doing well, showing that he has the support of the 1% and not of the 99%.
Sana has been trying to get in for a second there, Sana.
So I have two things. One, we don't have success in a country until our people are fed, until our people are educated, and until our people are happy.
Exactly.
Now, I want to go back to what Anthony was saying, how Trump hasn't delivered on his promises. And he hasn't been able to because I feel like every day there is some kind of a fire in this nation that we need to extinguish, whether it be mass shootings, whether it be natural disasters. And he has had every opportunity to be presidential, and he has not delivered in such a way.
Well, he's not a career politician. He is a businessman, and he's obviously not going to come up across diplomatic and perfect in his political speech. But at the same time, I think he has addressed crisis, and the reason he fails sometimes is because he's not that career politician trained. But I think overall, his administration is doing pretty well for the country, and his strong business background is showing, and it's reflecting in Wall Street. And it's not just the 1%; it's actually top-down shareholders across business. Average American worker is benefiting from the Trump administration.
That is not true, because if you look at what he has done, he spent more time tweeting than governing. And it's been shown all around across many fields. He has, the day that he first inaugurated, he already took the U.S. off the TPP, and that cuts down 600,000 plus jobs for Americans. It also took us away from the leadership in the global market, and that's why he's now in Asia trying to talk to the APEC community. But the worst part was that he started the tweeting and talking in wars with nuclear wars with Korea, the North Korea. So now he did not govern. He did not know the impact of his office.
I think that the main thing is that he is not like a figure, like a presidential figure now, because for the international idea about the president of the United States is not like a serious president. He is more worried about the social media, how he looks, what the people said about him, creating all this hate in the nation, all this division. So it's not like a figure for union in a country, for generate, a better nation, a fair nation. So in my opinion, it's not like idea that we have about the President of the United States.
Myra, let me just share this with you. This is from Reuters, and it's Trump approval ratings. This is an international look at the US president. 60% disapprove, 36% approve, and 3% have mixed feelings. Anthony, this idea about the president tweeting, does that bother you?
Well, he's a different president. He's not going to do things like politicians do it. So the tweeting, I have mixed feelings on it. I like it in some instances, some of it I don't. I think that's why I've kind of stepped back a little bit from the president because of some of the tweeting. But he's a modern president, and he's going to do what he needs to do.
Well, internationally, I would say it's a mixed bag as well. So we got this from people watching us live on 360 video. This is from Janet on Facebook saying, unfortunately, Trump is a mirror reflecting current American society, and the picture is not a pretty one. And that is coming to us via this feed right here on YouTube. You can see this 360-degree video there. Another person watching us on YouTube Live says, Trump is a failure. He's the most divisive figure ever to emerge in U.S. politics. So some strong words right there, Saba. On the note of being presidential, what do you make of how he's acting?
Well, obviously, like he said, this is the age of social media, and I actually like the fact that he tweets directly. He doesn't go through press secretaries to alter and make all his communications picture perfect. I think that's what appeals to millions of Americans who voted for him, that he's authentic and he will come out straight. He's bold, he's direct, he's not superficial, he's not going through filters. And yes, that's why sometimes it doesn't work out in his favor. And sometimes he tries being neutral in situations where he should probably be much stronger.
Do you have examples? Give us examples.
I was talking about Charlottesville. I would have liked to see a much stronger response. I didn't like his neutral approach, trying to balance it out.
Let's just remind our international audience about how the President of the United States dealt with Charlottesville, which was two groups coming together. You had the alt-right, and then we also had protesters against the alt-right. Have a listen to how the President responded.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. Racism is evil. And those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
So by his stating, he was misinformed, he was misrepresenting the fact, and he was called out on it.
No.
The other side was not violent.
No.
They didn't have club.
When he mentioned many
this was
sides,
the second time he already revised his statement, but he already said that there was the other side that came out.
Let me just check in with AJ. AJ, when you heard the President say those words, how did you unpack them?
Well, that's what he's trying to say, is that we have two groups there. One is the white supremacists, which everybody is scared of, especially the immigrants, the African Americans. So he's equating their actions to people that were out there to protest the actions of white supremacists. So he's really, and that's his base. He's actually, what he's trying to do is make his base feel good about his statements. He doesn't want to come out and say that these people are doing the wrong thing.
So my son's a student at UVA, and they protest with no weapons. They were peacefully protesting. They just have the side up, and they against white supremacy.
University of Virginia, and obviously that's the state where you live in, Jeannie. Let me just check in with Anthony, because this is heavy criticism of the president who you are a fan of.
Yeah, and let me step back. I am an NRA instructor. I teach concealed carry in my state. And one of the things that I teach is avoidance. Why get in a fight? These people came with an attitude, both sides. Let's face it. And that's what the president said. If the right and the left weren't there with an attitude, it wouldn't have happened. And that's my opinion.
So an attitude permits you to get in a car and ram someone over?
No, that's a whole different story. But the argument between both sides.
There was a young woman killed there.
That's true.
Thank you. It's
and
not
that was a
different
tragedy.
story.
That was a tragedy,
Bannon
but
being ousted out of the White House. That was because that language came out of Steve Bannon advising the president and his certain views about white supremacists. I think we did see Trump's reaction to that. He did take steps after the fact. And like I said, he's not diplomatic. He doesn't always come across very...
I'm sorry, he's the president of the United States.
But he's not perfect.
He's the president of the United States.
So
It has
Town Hall,
nothing to do about being perfect.
we have so much more to talk about, and we hear very clearly where you're coming from and how you're reacting to the first year of knowing that candidate Trump was then President Trump and how he's doing so far. Malika?
There's so much more to talk about, and of course I will bring up more tweets in part 2 of our show. Join us there, #AJStream.